Excellencies, distinguished guests, thank you very much for attending this press conference. As you know, the LLDC3 is a very large event, very action-packed, so we are very grateful to the panel for joining us for this very brief press conference. They've made time in their very busy schedules. Of course, we have the United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres. Thank you, sir. We have the Foreign Minister of Turkmenistan, Mr. Rashid Meredov. Thank you, sir. And Mr. Rabab Fatima, who's the Secretary General of the LLDC3. So thank you very much. I know each has a brief statement to make, and then we will have a chance for a couple of questions. But, sir, I hand over to you, Mr. Guterres, for a statement. Please. No? Okay, perhaps, would you like to speak first, Minister?
Ladies and gentlemen of the press, it is always a pleasure to be in Turkmenistan, and I thank President Serdar Berdimuhamedov and the people of Turkmenistan for their warm welcome. Your hosting of this important global gathering is a testament to the country's commitment to international cooperation and sustainable development. For the elements of the press of Turkmenistan, I have to say, as I mentioned this morning, that I've been coming to Turkmenistan for almost 2 decades. And in my visits to Turkmenistan, when I was Commissioner for Refugees, I was extremely impressed by the fact that Turkmenistan has solved one of the most difficult problems that we have today in the world, the problem of statelessness, especially when an empire or a federation or at that time also the Soviet Union are split. Many people stay without nationality. And you can imagine what it is not to have nationality, not to have a country they can call theirs, not to have papers, not to have rights. And here, all the stateless that after the end of the Soviet Union were in Turkmenistan, in an exemplary procedure, they were all transformed into citizens of the country, and they gained the rights of all other citizens. And this was almost unique in the world, a symbol of generosity that I never forgot, and this is the reason that being here, I also want to pay tribute to the generosity of the Turkmen people and the Turkmen government that made possible the organization of this conference. This conference reflects a new era of cooperation taking shape across Central Asia, one grounded in mutual trust, shared priorities, and growing regional solidarity. At a time when multilateral cooperation is being tested, this spirit of partnership is more essential than ever. The third United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries is a powerful reminder of both the scale of the challenges these countries face and the scale of the opportunity before us. Landlocked developing countries, 32 in total, across 4 continents, represent nearly 600 million people. People who deserve the same opportunities as anyone else, but who find themselves not only landlocked, but locked out of opportunities for global growth, finance, and technology, if the countries are countries in the process of development. They face some of the highest trade and transport costs in the world, limited market access, growing debt burdens, and intensifying climate and conflict risks. Today's discussions show that landlocked developing countries don't want charity. They want justice. They want equitable access, investment, a fair chance to build resilient economies and inclusive societies. The AWASA Programme of Action is a blueprint for doing so over the next decade, starting now. And allow me to briefly highlight 4 areas where we must act urgently and together for landlocked developing countries. First, unlocking economic potential. That means investing in infrastructure, but also in people, in education, digital skills, and local innovation. The countries represented here have the talent and the ideas. They need the tools and support. And this includes scaling up digital infrastructure and access to frontier technologies, such as artificial intelligence, to boost productivity and open new markets. Second, we must act to connect landlocked countries to the world. Trade corridors, transit systems, and regional integration are not technical issues, they are lifelines. Landlocked developing countries need smart logistics, streamlined systems, and stronger partnerships with transit countries. We must cut red tape, digitize border operations, and modernize transport networks to reduce delays and costs. Third, we must act to confront the climate crisis. Landlocked developing countries contribute little to global emissions, but suffer some of the worst impacts, from floods to droughts to desertification. The world must double adaptation finance and support LLDCs in building resilience and developing green industries. And fourth and finally, we must make the global financial system work for those who need it most. Too many landlocked countries are trapped in a cycle of debt and underinvestment. They pay more to borrow, yet receive less support. They need concessional finance at much greater scale, effective debt relief, and an international financial architecture that reflects the economy of today, not of 80 years ago. That is why I have consistently calling for the reform of the international financial institutions to provide greater representation to developing countries at decision-making table, and to ensure that multilateral development banks become bigger and bolder, substantially increase their lending capacity, and play a far greater role in de-risking investments and modernizing private capital at scale. When landlocked developing countries thrive, entire regions benefit. The United Nations is committed to working with every country to turn the AWASA Programme of Action into real results, jobs created, goods exported, emissions reduced, lives transformed. And we count on all Member States to support this effort and ensure that no country is left behind simply because of its geography. This is not only a matter of development, it's a matter of dignity and justice. Thank you.
Well, of course, those of you coming to Turkmenistan for the first time will have experienced the wonderful hospitality of the Turkmen people. I've had the honor of meeting Minister Meredov before, so I hand over to you, please, for your comments.
Thank you very much, Reid. Very good afternoon for all of the participants of today's briefing. And first of all, I would like to express my personal gratitude to the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, for his participation in person in this conference. And this is very important for all of us, for all of the member states of the United Nations. Your Excellency, Secretary General, distinguished representatives of media, ladies and gentlemen, today marks a truly historic moment, the official opening of the third United Nations Conference on Landlocked Developing Countries here in AWASA, Turkmenistan. We are deeply grateful to the Secretary General of the United Nations for his support and leadership. Earlier today, we witnessed a successful first plenary session of the conference, which brought together heads of state and governments, ministers, high-level UN officials, representatives of the international organizations, financial institutions, academia, civil society, and the private sector. It was encouraging to hear the strong, unified message that no country should be left behind because of geography. We are also honored to share that Turkmenistan has been elected as the president of the conference. This is a high responsibility and a demonstration of trust from the international community. We express our sincere gratitude for this confidence and reaffirm our full commitment to ensuring the effective, inclusive, and results-oriented conduct of the conference. As the host country, Turkmenistan is committed to supporting every step of this process. Our aim is to ensure that all delegations, whether they represent governments, international organizations and institutions, or other stakeholders, are able to contribute meaningfully and benefit fully from the discussions taking place here in Avaza. In the coming days, the conference will continue with a comprehensive program that reflects the scale and ambition of our shared goals. This includes 5 high-level thematic roundtables designed to address the key priorities of the Avaza program of action. At the same time, some important meetings will be arranged, among them the Civil Society Forum, the Private Sector Forum, the Youth Forum, and the Women Leaders Forum. We also look forward to the ministerial meeting on the South-South cooperation and the connectivity track. Furthermore, more than 40 side events will be organized through the week, offering space for innovation, experience sharing, and collaboration across sectors and regions. Turkmenistan considers this conference not only a platform to assess challenges, but also an opportunity to formulate concrete, future-oriented solutions that align with our shared priorities for sustainable development. In this context, I would like to recall that the President of Turkmenistan, His Excellency Serdar Berdimuhamedov, in his address earlier today, put forward a number of international initiatives that demonstrate our readiness to contribute meaningfully to global progress and solidarity. Among them, the initiative Global Medicine of the Future, Solidarity and Cooperation, aimed at uniting the efforts of the international community in preventing and responding to global health threats. The proposal to develop a global atlas of sustainable transport connectivity, particularly relevant for landlocked developing countries. The call to begin consultations starting next year on the development of a global program for the transition to hydrogen energy for the period 2030-2040. And the proposal to elaborate a global framework program for the transition to a circular economy in cooperation with the relevant UN institutions. These initiatives reflect our belief in the power of multilateral cooperation, innovation, and solidarity. Ladies and gentlemen, it is highly symbolic of the fact that LLDC3 is being held in 2025, a year that marks 2 important milestones: the 80th anniversary of the United Nations and the 30th anniversary since the international recognition of Turkmenistan's status of permanent neutrality. We believe these values, neutrality, peace, and mutual respect, are especially relevant as we explore collective solutions to global development challenges. We're only at the beginning of this important journey in Avaza, but the foundation has been laid for a successful and impactful conference. We thank all participants for their engagement, the United Nations for its partnership, and especially to the Secretary General for standing with us. Let us continue this work with purpose, solidarity, and vision. Thank you for your attention.
You'll notice, Minister, that Secretary General Fatima's phone celebrated with you when you announced the anniversaries. So, you know, it's wonderful to hear the Minister talk about shared priorities and how important they are. And of course, Secretary General Guterres talked about the fact that multilateral cooperation is under threat. To use the words of Einstein, what you'll all be familiar with as one of the smartest people, he said, nothing truly valuable can be achieved except by unselfish cooperation of many individuals. And this is the point of a conference like this. We have only a few minutes, I'm afraid, because both, well, all our guests have very busy schedules, but I do know we have a question we can get to you from our audience here. Please state your name and full affinity of...
Toby Gregory from Euronews. I've got a two-pronged question, if I may, for the Secretary-General and the Foreign Minister. Starting with the Secretary-General, building on the cooperation we've just heard about, you mentioned in your speech earlier about geography not defining destiny. You mentioned in your speech earlier about geography not defining destiny, and also warned of landlocked countries being left behind. And just with that in mind, if there was one message you could give the global community in terms of how they could work better with landlocked developing countries, what would that one message be? And for the Foreign Minister, if I may, one of the central challenges facing landlocked countries is interconnectivity issues. And with that in mind, what would interconnectivity look like to you with Turkmenistan, Central Asia, and perhaps Europe? Thank you.
Thank you.
When one sees landlocked countries, we see a number of problems that can be resolved. You have in Europe several landlocked countries, but they have free access to harbors, they have free movement of goods and people around the European continent. It is important that any landlocked country gains access to international markets, that infrastructures are created and rules are established to allow for products to come in and out and to be integrated in international markets. But I'm not worried about landlocked developed countries. I'm worried about landlocked developing countries. Because in any case, there will be higher costs. In any case, there will be more difficulties. And so as developing countries, to be able to overcome the challenge of being landlocked, being far from harbors, being far from, in many aspects, related to the functioning of international markets, it's essential that the international community creates the conditions for development, which means reforms of the international financial system, which means effective debt relief, which means that multilateral development banks become bigger, are adequately capitalized and bolder, able to increase substantially concessional funding, but also to mobilize a lot of private capital, de-risking private capital, And it is also essential that the mechanisms of concessional funding are substantially increased. So we need to address the problems of the countries because they are developing, and we need to address the problems of countries because beyond being developing, they are landlocked. But in any case, freedom of circulation of goods, services and people is an essential element. And the infrastructure and the infrastructure necessary to make it happen are also essential. I'll give you an example. Portugal, before joining the European Union, had 4% of its foreign trade with Spain. Today it has 40%. That shows how good connections, freedom of movement increase substantially the capacity of landlocked countries finding ways to develop. There is an high-level panel on freedom of transit.
Awaza has asked for a high-level panel to be set up by you.
And it will be established in the consequences of this agreement.
Wonderful. And Minister Merdov, your question as well.
First of all, thank you very much for your question. This is a very important one. In this context, I would like to say that interconnectivity is very important in the direction of our cooperation with the world. In particular, when we are talking about the interconnectivity with the European Union, with the Europe in whole, we are doing it on the very strong foundation. One of the elements of this foundation, maybe one of the important elements of this foundation, is the strategy of the European Union titled Global Gateway. Thanks to our European colleagues, they provided to us very concrete program of cooperation with the Europe. As you know, last year, it was exactly the end of January of 2024, European Union arranged the special investment forum under this strategy, I mean the Global Gateway, and the Turkmenistan's delegation participated in this forum. And the beginning of October this year, it will be the summit. And we have a very strong preparation for the participation in this summit. I very strongly believe that during the summit we will discuss maybe a lot of issues regarding the activization, the interconnectivity between the region of the Central Asia and Europe. You know that in the beginning of this March, we arranged the meeting of the ministers of foreign affairs of the Central Asian countries, and High Representative of the European Union, Madam Kaja Kallas, she's responsible for foreign policy and security, of course. And during this meeting, we discussed these issues, the issues of interconnectivity. Interconnectivity for all of us means, of course, we will be ready to increase our cooperation in transport transit sphere. Interconnectivity for us is to increase, to expand our cooperation in energy sector in the context of the green energy, Interconnectivity for us is to expand our trade, economic relations, and of course, one of the important directions of interconnectivity between Central Asia and Europe is people-to-people contacts. It means that today, in particular, Turkmenistan is ready to expand its relationship with the Europe in the spheres of education, science, healthcare, culture, and other social spheres. So, we're doing a lot for our cooperation with Europe in the context of the expanding the interconnectivity, and I'm very strong belief that we will do more in this direction. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I think we're very tight on time, so we've gone a little bit over. I apologize, but we're so tight on time. I'm going to let our panel go. Do enjoy the hospitality of Turkmenistan, and make sure you visit the Caspian Sea. For a landlocked country, you have some of the most unspoilt beaches I've ever encountered. So thank you, Foreign Minister, Secretary General, and Secretary General of LLDC3. Thank you so much. A round of applause, please, and we will let them go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.